Welcome to the Design Thinker podcast, where we explore the theory and practice of design. Hosted by me, Donnie, and
me, Peter.
Hello, Peter.
Hi, Danny.
How are you?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you today?
I am good. Today is a monumental moment for us.
Whoa, monumental. That's a big word.
I'm
Oh,
practicing my big girl words.
oh, yeah. Monumental. What is monumental about today, Danny? Tell us.
I feel like we need a little suspense.
Okay, we're
I
going to
think
build up to it.
I think you might know what it is. Hopefully you know what it is.
I definitely know what it is. We're teasing our listeners. Maybe they know what it is already as well because they've read the podcast episode description. Yeah,
Shall I tell them?
let's tell them. Let's share our excitement.
This episode is monumental because it is our 50th episode.
50th episode, number 50. That I agree. That is something to talk about. That's a monumental, from our point of view, achievement. It's a good milestone.
That is a big milestone. Who would have thunk it?
I don't think I did, or had no idea that we'd have published 50 of our conversations, Danny.
What are we talking about today, Peter?
What are we talking about today? I think we're taking this opportunity to talk about celebrating. So reflecting and celebrating, I think, is what we're going to talk about, Danny. I'm a bit distracted and overwhelmed by the fact this is episode number 50. But we're talking about reflection and celebration and the importance of both of those modes and activities.
Celebrating is not something that we do well. Not we as in you and me, the royal we. Even in an individual level, at a team level, at an organizational level, it's just not something that we do
Hmm.
or we
It,
don't find time to do.
it's not as much of a habit as it ought to be for most of us, and it's the collective us, whether it's individuals or organizations.
Mm.
And would you say the same thing goes for reflection?
Part of celebration is reflection. If you think about if we were celebrating birthdays, part of that moment is looking back on what's happened in your life since you were born, since the last time you celebrated.
Mm,
There's a strong correlation between celebrations and reflections.
mm.
So maybe today we go off our structure a little bit,
Oh yeah, okay.
and as part of our celebrating, maybe look back on how this whole thing started.
Yes, let's do that. And also, see what I did there. Let's also just give ourselves, us and our listeners, a little bit of comfort and do a quick bit of defining. Maybe
Oh,
do that. Maybe we define and then look back.
yeah.
So celebrate. There's three different definitions here. Hmm. There is acknowledge, and in the brackets it says parentheses. It says a significant or happy day or event with a social gathering or enjoyable activity. Number two is perform a religious ceremony, in particular, officiate. And three is honor or praise publicly. And
Mm.
celebrate, it comes from, well, it emerged in late Middle English. It comes from the Latin celeber, which is frequented or honored. So that's celebrate. We'll go on to reflect in a minute, but celebrate. So I think we are definitely wanting to acknowledge a significant, happy day with an
Mhm.
enjoyable activity. And I think we will do a little bit of maybe honoring or praising publicly. Are we? Maybe we'll not get into the performing a religious ceremony today, though.
No, that's a little bit beyond our capabilities and off
Um,
topic.
yes, and we're not in the business of leading a cult or starting a religion.
No, no.
So no, we're not do that. And then reflect.
Wait, before you move on to
Go on.
reflect,
Yeah.
when you're reading that definition, it mentioned a social gathering.
Mm.
My question is, do we need a social gathering to celebrate? Is it not a
Ooh,
celebration if other people aren't there?
good question. What to define a social gathering? Is this recording a social gathering? Do you have to be in 2025 actually face to face, or can you be like we are, distant but connected over the internet? And also, is two people a social gathering, or do you need three or more.
Given that we had, what, 2 years of virtual social gathering, we have some, I'll call it experiments that we can pull from.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, are you really angling at Danny, the extrovert Tigger? Do you want us to get together with some listeners or something? Is that what you're suggesting? Okay,
That is not what I'm suggesting.
okay.
I'm just questioning when we say we celebrate, does it
Mm,
have to be with others?
mm,
So if I have done something
mm.
I'm really proud of and I take myself out for a cup of coffee,
Ah,
is that
okay.
celebrating?
Got you. Wow. Yeah, great challenge to the dictionary definition. Yeah, I think so. I think you can acknowledge yourself and your own achievements, and yeah, take yourself out for a cup of coffee, give yourself a pat in the back. Got you. Yep. So that this definition isn't broad enough for our liking.
There's this misnomer that celebrations are for big things. I think
Hmm.
celebrations are also for little things, right? For example, when we recorded our first episode and I published it, was that celebration worthy?
It was for me, and I think for you too. It was for us. We'd achieved something small, but definitely worth it, or definitely worthwhile celebrating. Because that's a good question. Why did we feel like it was worthwhile celebrating that small milestone? Or I'm saying small now. It seems like it in retrospect. Tell me more. It feels like you're asking me a bit of a rhetorical question.
So you and I had talked about starting this podcast forever. It's got to the point that you and I were getting tired of talking about starting the podcast, and we were starting to go, look, we either do it or we just need to stop talking about it, right? The reason that celebrations are important is because celebrating little things are important because we wouldn't have gotten to 50 episodes had we not recorded the first episode. And we
Yeah,
wouldn't have gotten to 50 episodes had we not recorded the second episode. So all
yeah.
of those things are celebration worthy because they were stacking up to something bigger. But had we not taken a moment to celebrate publishing the first episode, it probably wouldn't have given us the momentum and that dopamine hit to do the second one.
I see where you're going with this. Yes. If we'd simply treated it as we've ticked something off the to-do list and moved on to the very next thing without just spending a little bit of time to acknowledge what we've just done, then yeah, maybe we wouldn't be here at number 50. Okay. Yep. Okay. I'm buying into this. I'm saving something up for later because I know it's too early to talk about it. That's why I've gone a little bit quiet. I'm thinking.
Okay, so celebration
Yeah.
is, let's sum it up for our listeners. So when
Mhm.
we say celebration, we mean acknowledging.
Yeah, acknowledging, and unlike this dictionary definition, which says with a social gathering or enjoyable activity, it did say enjoyable activity actually in that. So an enjoyable activity could be going out for coffee by yourself. It could be phoning somebody or jumping on a Zoom call with somebody. Um, or like it says, social gathering could be a great big event. There's more to it than that. I think there's this kind of, it involves pausing and being deliberate. It's like being like intentional, an intentional activity.
There's an intentionality.
Yeah.
There's an intentionality to it. I also think this is why rituals are so important, right? Because
Mm.
rituals are a part of
Hmm.
celebrating because, oh, do we need to define rituals?
Sure. Why not? You gotta go. You're breaking the rules all over the place,
I
introducing new
guess.
words. Ritual. You're gonna love this. A ritual, a religious or solemn ceremony consisting of a series of actions performed according to a prescribed order. I'm not sure that's what you mean.
That is not what I mean.
See if we can find another one that. Here we go. Ritual, a way of. This is the Cambridge Dictionary. I think the last one was the Oxford. Ritual, a way of doing something in which the same actions are done in the same way every time. For example, coffee and the newspaper are part of my morning ritual. Another definition, a fixed set of actions and words, especially as part of a religious ceremony. So yeah, I think what you're talking about is more the first one, a way of doing something in which the same actions are done in the same way every time.
Rituals are part of celebration. We all have social norms of things that signify celebration. So, cake, for instance, we take cake as a birthday cake to celebrate your birthday, an anniversary cake to celebrate your anniversary,
Yeah,
a farewell cake, right? So, that is a symbol of celebration. Or even things like champagne and champagne glasses, that signifies to us, ooh, something celebratory is happening.
yeah. The um the ritual of opening the champagne bottle,
Mm.
the peeling of the foil, the taking off of the wire cage, and the popping of the cork. Yeah,
Yeah. So we have these symbols and rituals that signify celebration. Celebration includes rituals. They have symbols like cake and champagne. And I think the other one that you were getting to with your pausing, I think now we're leading into the reflective part of celebrating.
oh yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I'll take that. I'm not sure if I was getting quite to that. It was just because you can pause and not reflect, but yeah, maybe I was getting to the actually making time, setting aside some time
Mm.
to consciously, intentionally invest in the celebration. And that could be 4 or 5 minutes, or I guess in extreme cases, 5 days. But reflection, will go.
No, actually, let's keep going down that plan. So I
Right,
think
okay.
there is a need to be deliberate about making time. There needs to be there's a scale like you were talking about, right? So it probably wouldn't have been appropriate after we published our first episode to go take a 7-day cruise to celebrate.
Yeah.
But maybe that is appropriate when we, I don't know, hit our 100th episode.
500 maybe.
Okay, 500. Maybe
Yeah.
that's appropriate when we hit 500 episodes.
Yeah.
So there is this, how long do we pause and deliberately acknowledge this for?
Mm.
That this sort of a scale.
Proportional then, maybe.
Yes.
Proportional and appropriate. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay. Now do we go into
Yeah,
reflection?
let's see. Yeah, because I think there is, in my mind, a good celebration does involve reflection. I think it's worth, yeah, it's the classic past, present, future makes a good celebration, doesn't it? You're like, oh, where have we come from? Where are we now? And what might happen next? Reflect. The verb to reflect is first one is throw back, heat, light, or sound without absorbing it. Don't think that's what we're talking about.
No.
Think deeply or carefully about, or bring credit or discredit to the relevant parties. So, for the incident reflects badly on the operating practices of the airlines, is the example given there. It's number two, isn't it? He reflected with gratitude on the happiness of his marriage, is given there. So, reflect comes from what's another Latin origin? Re in Latin is back, and flectere was the verb to bend. So it's basically saying to bend back originally. Interestingly, it's grown in use from a low point in the early 1900s to a much greater usage in the last 20 or 30 years.
That makes sense. As our world has become more and more complex, there's a greater need to reflect.
Yes. So reflection, part of celebration. Do you think are you buying into what I'm saying there, Danny? It's an essential element of celebration.
I'm just thinking about things that I have celebrated in my own life. Going to anniversary parties and looking back on somebody's been married 50 years and looking at their wedding photo and all the key moments in their lives,
Mhm.
or going to significant milestone birthdays and seeing a similar thing. Like that is it's not the form of reflection reflection comes in many forms. And I think looking back at those key moments
Mhm.
is a way that we can reflect.
Yeah, agreed. And I think both the high and the low points,
Mm,
the things that were easy and the challenges, and the successes and the failures,
mm.
it's all part of reflection, isn't it? And I think more, maybe especially when you're celebrating, it's just as important think about those lows and those challenges and those failures as it is about the highs and the successes. Yeah,
The path to anything isn't always positive. Even in our own podcasting journey, we've had not so good times.
yeah, yeah,
It's not an authentic celebration if you're not acknowledging the highs and the lows. And part of celebrating is that you've overcome those low points and you kept going.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And in actual fact, it's more worthy of celebration if you have overcome challenges and difficulties to get to where you are.
Hmm.
Okay, so we've done a bit of defining, a bit of exploring of what those words mean to us in our context of celebrating our 50th episode. What's our next? You'd think by 50 episode that I would know what comes next, but for some reason my brain just doesn't.
Why?
Why? We've touched a little bit on why, haven't we? But why celebrate? Why bother celebrating, Danny? To be clear to the listener, I think we're noodling on this because we've got something to celebrate, but I think it's we're talking about and encouraging celebration to become more a part of our working and other daily, weekly, monthly lives, finding things to celebrate. So why is it important?
When we celebrate, it's a form of reinforcement. I think you're the one that told me that quote, we get what we celebrate.
Yes, and that was the thing I was going to bring up later. Do you want me to elaborate on that?
Sorry, spoiler
No,
alert.
thanks for bringing it up. So it's playing in my mind. Yeah, I only heard this quote or this particular use of those words only a couple of months ago. It comes from Frank Blake, who was the chairman and CEO of the Home Depot, or for our American listeners and Danny, the Home Depot,
Yes.
DIY hardware retailer in America and USA. He was chairman and CEO from 2007 to 2014. And he has this wonderful perspective phrase, you get what you celebrate. So, as the leader of that huge big organization, yeah, recognized and lived by that maxim, you get what you celebrate. If you don't celebrate something, then don't expect to get more of it. So, therefore, as a leader of an organization, decide what you want and then go and look for it and then celebrate it. And the
Mm.
story I heard that brought this to life was the example of somebody in, so he brought together his store leadership team, so hundreds of people who manage stores all across the states to an annual conference,
Mm.
and he told them the story, and I think might even have brought the person on stage, the story of a someone at the cash register at one of the stores who had taken a decision upon themselves to give outstanding customer service. They'd had a strategic goal, or they did. Frank Blake set the team's a strategic goal to improve their customer service, and they had lots of different mechanisms for doing that and measuring it. And he could have spent his time on stage at this conference going through charts and tables and doing a PowerPoint presentation. What he did instead was tell the story of this checkout clerk who was helping an elderly gentleman pay for some timber. And the person just happened to ask, well, sir, can I ask you what your project is today? And the gentleman said, unfortunately, my grandson has passed away unexpectedly, and I really want to build his casket, his coffin, and that's what this timber is for. And the checkout clerk basically said to the gentleman, "Don't worry about this. We'll take care of it. We're not going to ask you to pay for this. Please, just this. I'm sorry for your loss, and this is our way of helping you in this difficult time." That the person didn't ask for permission to do that. They didn't have a guidebook or rule book that told them they were able to do that. They just decided that was the right thing to do in that moment for that customer. Frank Blake told that story on stage, and that he may or may not have brought the checkout person on stage to celebrate them, but he used that as an example of and celebrated it to re-emphasize this message of you get what you celebrate.
It reinforces the behaviors you want to see, right? So when we
Yeah.
see what is being acknowledged and what is being celebrated, it creates in our brains, we're like, ah, that is
Mm,
what. So
mm.
remember, our brains are very good at recognizing patterns. So it starts to build a pattern of these are the things that I should be doing. Another reason that we need to celebrate is I hear leaders talking all the time about how people need to be more resilient. Resilient isn't an infinite pool of things. Resilience is built. And one of the ways we build resilience is by celebrating.
Okay.
Because when we take the time to acknowledge and reflect, so when we celebrate, we acknowledge, wow, yeah, you've done this amazing thing. And then we
Mm,
pause and we reflect on how we got to where we got to. We realize that we are capable of overcoming hard things. We are capable of doing difficult things. We are
mm,
capable of following through and achieving big results and big outcomes.
mm.
And that is how we start to build our resilience.
Love it. Yeah, and you brought to life me for me an important aspect of this pausing and celebrating is that it's very, you might be able to tell me why this is from a brain point of view, but it's very easy to forget our past selves. We
Mm.
forget we're looking at a snapshot of our current state and we actually forget how far we've come, either as an individual or as a group on a particular journey without looking back and remembering where we were 6 months or 12 months or however far long ago. We just blank out the journey we've been on and blank out the difficulties we overcame to get where we are, and maybe more fundamentally, blank out the fact that we've come so far because we're still perhaps seeing the road ahead and that it's full of challenges itself.
We forget
Hmm.
that once we've done something, the novelty wears off. I remember this happening when I was applying to PhD programs. It felt like this monumental task. And the idea of finishing a PhD felt so big and so amazing and so far out there. And then after I finished it, it just started to feel like, so what? Everybody's got one
Ah, yeah,
because it's now familiar to me.
yeah. It's yeah. So it sounds. Compare that to. I think the phenomenon is called risk homeostasis. Is that right? I guess it's yeah, similar to me starting to jump out of airplanes, and
Mm.
that became my normal. To most people, it's quite extreme, but to me and my group of friends, it was just what we did at the weekend. That was normal to us, and yeah,
That's just normalizing it.
okay. So
Yeah.
that's different to what you're saying, which is
No, no, we're
you
saying the same thing.
okay, okay,
It's normalizing it.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like, to us
mm,
now, recording a podcast isn't a big deal because we've done it 50 times. But if we go back in time 3 years,
mm,
and if we had the ability to go back 3 years and tell ourselves,
mm,
oh my gosh, you're going to be recording your 50th episode.
yeah,
Do you get what I'm saying? Like the
yeah, I
novelty
do.
of this has worn off.
That's worn off, and actually, that's a reason to pause and celebrate, isn't it? I think that's what we're saying the same thing, yeah, because you go that we lose sight of the fact that we're still applying even though the novelty's worn off, for example, the from recording the podcast, we're still applying the same effort. We're still enjoying it as much or more than we're still, yeah, even though it seems normal, it's still worthy of celebration. And I'm pausing there because my brain is going into work mode and going, yeah, this is what happens in work and so many other aspects of our lives because things that seemed impossible or extraordinary at one point just become normal and we take them for granted. And what we are saying is actually every now and again we should pause and reflect and go, wow, we've come so far. This is worthy of a bit of celebration.
This leads to another reason why we need to celebrate.
See what I did there?
Yes, well done. This wasn't planned. Another reason we need to celebrate is because it helps us reconnect with the purpose.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because what does happen is we go from delivering one big project to the next big project to the, and
Mm,
then we forget I've delivered so many what were they even for?
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And this is not even just in our work lives, it's our personal lives as well. I often hear people saying, "Oh, I don't celebrate my birthday," which I personally think is just sad.
Mm, mm,
But the fact that you have lived a whole other 365 days
mm.
is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, another orbit around the sun. Yeah, yeah, agreed. So thank you. I will take that and go, actually, that remind us to be grateful can help us to remember or to, yeah, to be grateful and reinforce gratitude, make us reflect on the things we could be grateful for and pay more attention to. And science shows, it's usually you that says that. Science or research shows that gratitude is a very important but overlooked component of our individual and
Mm.
group mental health.
And celebration is a time that we can share gratitude. So you shared the experience of Frank Blake,
Yeah,
the former CEO of Home. That is a time to be. So in when he got up on stage and told that story, that is a form of gratitude. It's celebration, but it's also gratitude. It's literally saying, "Thank you. I'm very appreciative
yeah,
that there are people on my team that do these types of things, that look
yeah,
after my customers." When we celebrate anniversaries, you're literally telling your partner, I'm very grateful you're choosing to continue this life with me because they don't have to. You don't
yeah,
have to either, but they don't have to.
yeah,
But that is the gratitude that comes in that is that you're
mm,
taking that moment to go, wow, this person has chosen to spend X many years and continues to want to spend X many years
mm,
with me. Very grateful.
yeah, yeah. I love it. Okay, maybe where my mind is going is I think especially in the work context and probably just as much in most people's personal lives in the times we're living in, things are hectic and if we're not careful, I almost went into Ferris Bueller mode there. But if we're not careful, life can flip us by. I wish
Mhm.
I knew that quote off by heart. Life gets hectic and we just don't we forget or we choose not to celebrate even the small things. And it's a bucket filling activity, the metaphor of having a bucket full of energy at the beginning of a period, whether it's a day, a week, a year, not the Friends theme tune. And we're depleting our energy, investing it in activities and striving for goals, accomplishments, achievements, having tasks to do to keep life on the road or our lives going where we want them to, delivering things at work. And unless we pause and reflect and celebrate, then that bucket will continue to be depleted. Celebration is a bucket filling activity.
Celebration is a bucket filling activity.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. This is maybe a premature question, but can there be such a thing as too much celebration?
Can there be some? Yes.
Okay.
I'm a pragmatist, right? So I
Yeah,
think everything has to be in balance.
yeah,
We have to achieve some things to celebrate them. I think where we're missing the mark
mm,
is that was two places we're missing the mark. One is that we have this idea in our head that celebrations are big and only worthy of big things.
yeah, yeah,
So I don't think we've mastered scaling celebration.
yeah,
The other part where we're failing with celebration is that we just don't do it for
yeah,
big
yeah,
or small things. We just don't.
yeah, yeah. So I think my strange idea that we might at some point over celebrate, we're very far away from that because we're currently generally under celebrating. We're not celebrating enough. Where I was thinking about the over celebration is if we did it too much, then we would start to lose the novelty. Plus, we just wouldn't have, we'd spend all our time celebrating and no time actually doing stuff to celebrate.
So you have to do some stuff to celebrate
To
the stuff.
celebrate, you can't be celebrating a celebration that starts to get a bit too inception like. However, where my mind was going to was I wonder whether to get better at celebration, the part of our celebration is actually talking about why we celebrate. If you are like I'm reflecting on times when I've been involved in agile ways of working and having fortnightly sprints and then reviews at the end of those sprints or the reviews at the end of say 10 sprints or a quarter. And it's a good idea to have a celebration of those points. Maybe yeah, celebrating at the end of every day or is getting too much. But what I think yeah is helpful is at the beginning of a celebration to remind us all of why we are celebrating, what good it does us. So maybe that's another ingredient into our recipe for. Oh, sorry, I've slipped. Sorry, I've sneakily taken us from why into how accidentally, haven't I?
So why don't we talk about how do we celebrate,
Yeah,
ways of celebrating?
yeah,
outside of the norm, right? So I think when we say celebrate, parties come to mind and
Yeah,
cake
yeah,
comes to mind. And
yeah.
so we all have these symbols and rituals that come to mind. What I am talking, I wonder if what we talk about in terms of the how is how do we celebrate the things that we don't tend to celebrate? How do we
Mm.
celebrate the work?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, I'd like to do that. And what comes to mind for me, just to share with you, is the celebration in the form of recognition at work, and the sometimes that recognition is well intended but ill-founded, if I can frame it that way, and that the celebration becomes about the wrong thing. And I'm thinking here, I've mentioned it before a couple of times, my one of my favorite books of all time and pieces of research, The Progress Principle, Teresa Amabiel, where their research showed that, contrary to most managers' point beliefs that people would like or people need reward and recognition as a motivator. Most people's main motivator is making progress in meaningful work. So therefore, that's the thing that should be celebrated is making progress in meaningful work. And coming back to one of our earlier points, however big or small that progress is, it's worthy of celebration, and it should come before the recognition and the rewarding of, or the providing of reward and recognition. I'm getting myself a bit mixed up, but
Yeah. So if you are a leader and you have individuals on your team that are working on big things. One of the best things that you can do to keep up motivation, to productivity, to all the things that companies are wanting to achieve, one of the things you can do as a leader
mm,
is to recognize progress, to celebrate progress. And
yeah,
that happens in very small ways.
mm,
It could simply be an email going, "Hey, I saw that you got to this point in this project. Yet,
mm,
congrats," or "I know you've been putting in a lot of hours." Just a very simple message to acknowledge the progress.
yeah,
That is celebrating.
yeah,
That's one of the most effective things you can do. The other
yeah,
thing that, while we're on this topic, that I'll talk about is you also need to have, as a leader, you need to have a sense of different people want to celebrate in different ways. Super introverted people do not want to be
mm,
ushered out in front of a group of people and have a big fuss made about them.
yeah,
That is not, to some people, that is not enjoyable. That's not celebration to them. That's like torture to them.
yeah,
What they might appreciate is that quiet conversation. What they might appreciate is, hey, you've made such good progress on this piece of work. Why don't we go out to coffee
mm,
tomorrow? Can I
mm,
take you out to coffee just
mm,
to celebrate where you've gotten to with this? So you see the language, it's where you've gotten to with this. It's not finished it.
yeah,
Those little moments of celebrating along the way. And
mm,
if you do that consistently,
mm,
those projects will get done. That productivity of getting things done will go up.
yeah, yeah, nice. So how we celebrate, it's overlapping with it, but with what we celebrate, what you're saying there is it's just as important to celebrate along the journey as at the end of it. And often we think that it's only worth celebrating when we get to the end of the journey and deliver something. And what you're saying, what research shows, that actually it's just as even more important to go, like you're saying, how far we've got so far.
Because chances are, if you don't have those celebration moments in between, you won't make it to the end to celebrate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or what you get to the end of isn't actually worth celebrating. And yet, and I think this is maybe where, in the work context, we can sometimes end up with bad taste in our mouths and therefore an aversion to celebration, in that the launch party is booked in months before the thing is actually launched, and the launch party goes ahead regardless of how successful the launch actually is. And people under the surface realize that the celebration wasn't proportionate to the actual achievement or event.
It has to be authentic.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So, in terms of how, one how is we need to celebrate progress, and we
Hmm.
do that by small moments of recognition, whether it's an email, a message, or even a chat to go, "You've made such good progress on this. Thank you. I really appreciate the progress you've made on this. Can I take you out for coffee?" And let's just celebrate what you've gotten to. And then another element of that is being authentic.
Yeah.
People are very good at sensing fakeness.
Yeah. We can spot when something doesn't fit a pattern.
Exactly. So authenticity in celebrations matter. And then the other thing that we've talked about is making sure the type of celebration matches the person. I remember there was a celebration for somebody for having worked at this organization for 30 years, and they were putting on this big cocktail party for them. And this person was petrified. I ran into them and they were going to bring them out on stage, and they were just standing there, literally sweating. He had taken his suit jacket on and like all of his arm down his
Goodness.
shirt. And he's, I am terrified. I don't want to be here. I don't want to do that. And I'm just sitting there. This is supposed to be a celebration of this guy's commitment to this organization. And
Yeah.
he's hating every moment of it.
Yeah. Not good. We go back to why is it important, and it's not ticking all the boxes, it's crossing all the boxes. It's like going, this person, not that this person will do the opposite of what he's just done to avoid the celebration in the future because it's a very uncomfortable experience. Yeah.
And I just got to chatting with him to try to get, and
Mm,
what he said is, why couldn't they have just given me a gift certificate to go to dinner with my family or something?
mm,
He said it very nonchalantly, being a design thinker. I'm like,
yeah. Yeah.
there's an idea. And maybe it's a choice. Maybe it's you get this big fancy party or you get a gift certificate to go out with your family. And maybe there's a, maybe you don't like your family. So there's a, I don't know, spa day for you or something. A
And
solo
again,
activity.
it comes back to well-intentioned, doesn't it? Like the people who created that event for that person, I'm sure they were really, their intent was to give that give that person
Mm.
adequate or give that person the recognition they deserved. But yeah, the way that they delivered it could have benefited from a little bit of conversation or empathy for that person. Yeah. And I know I'm thinking of places I've worked where, annual rewards for individuals were things like winning a trip with the other individuals who'd been recognized to a place and spending time in a resort with some colleagues and leaders in the work. Some people absolutely love that, and some people felt like they were being made to go. And the people who may have, I mean, the purpose of is to incentivize and motivate, and as well as to recognize and celebrate, to encourage other people to do their best work and contribute in the best way they possibly can. But let's say 50% of the potential audience of that message are actually doing the opposite because they don't see that as an appealing.
I'm not
uh,
going to perform my best because they may make me go on this trip
exactly.
that I don't
Yeah,
want to
yeah.
go on.
Yeah, exactly. So again, intention, but not having always having the desired result.
An important thing here, and this applies to leaders, this applies to really everybody, is asking other people, how do you want? I'm really proud of this thing you've done, and I'd like to take a moment to celebrate. How would you like to?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And another how is thinking about, are you celebrating an individual or are you celebrating a group of people? If your intention is to build an amazing culture in an organization, then think about I think my perspective from my own experience in organizations is have a think about recognizing the groups of people and the work that they've achieved together rather than singling out or always consistently or only singling out individuals and recognizing them. Because, as our friend Frank Blake says, you get what you celebrate. So, if you celebrate individual contribution and achievement, celebration worthy as it might be, and you do not celebrate team contribution and achievement or team working, then guess what will happen? You will reinforce the idea that individual effort is more important than teamwork. And in most organizations I've worked in, the emphasis is in the messaging at least has been we need to work together as a team to achieve what we're doing. We won't be able to do it as individuals, and yet at the end of every quarter, year, etc., is the individual that gets recognized more often than not.
So this is why every organization's we need to collaborate better,
Yeah,
but nobody wants to talk about the reason that people aren't. There's lots of reasons that people aren't collaborating well. The
Yeah.
simple solution seems to be let's send them on a training course. That seems to
Yeah.
be the answer to everything, right?
Yeah.
Which you do need to, people do need to learn how to collaborate. So that is a skill you need to learn.
Yeah.
In addition to that, though, if you want people to truly to collaborate, you have to have a reward system that reinforces
Mm.
collaboration, and celebration is part of that. At the same time, though, there needs to be a balance. So, in the case of that individual that was being recognized for 30 years of service, that is an individual achievement and he should have been celebrated.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that situation, celebrating the whole team
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there are other situations. So, like in a project, if a team has been working together to deliver a project, that team needs to be recognized, not an
Yeah.
individual, but the team, because the project would not have been successful if it had
Yeah.
not been for the team.
Yeah.
And I know that there are different dynamics. There's always passengers in teams that don't pick up their weight, but that is a performance issue that needs to be dealt. If
Mhm.
somebody's not performing on a team, then deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The way to deal with that isn't to celebrate the individuals within the team. The way to deal with that is to performance manage the person that's not performing within the team, but then celebrate the team.
Yeah. 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 Agreed. Thanks for entertaining that mini rant there. So how? So we're still on how. So we want to be how we celebrate should be appropriate, proportional, definitely empathetic, and balancing individuals and groups of any size. How practically, how else? Because I think where we started this was it doesn't need to be a big event, and we've maybe strayed into big event territory, like sending people on flights overseas or having big parties, or but maybe let's start at the other end of the scale, Danny. How else might we celebrate?
So small ways to celebrate, a simple ways to celebrate is literally just taking a moment.
Mm,
Hey, we've just done this awesome thing.
yeah, yeah,
Yay. If we're going to go to the smallest way of celebrating, I think it is that it's taking a moment to acknowledge with words that,
yeah.
hey, this is a
Well,
big moment.
I'm going to coin a phrase here, and I am borrowing heavily, but maybe atomic celebrations. I like
Oh,
that.
I like that.
Shout out to Atomic Habits and James Clear for the inspiration there. Full credit. But atomic celebrations, yeah, we tend to go, I don't know, cosmic or global at least, or intercontinental, literally sometimes. But there's space and need for atomic celebrations too.
Hmm. So the little celebrations can be the words, it could be
Mm,
treating somebody to coffees, treating yourself to a coffee.
mm.
It could be, oh,
Those listening and not watching, first of all, thanks. Danny just held up some bars of
one of
chocolate.
my favorite ways to celebrate
Yeah,
is with some chocolate.
a wee bar of chocolate or a wee piece of chocolate. Likewise, I've got some too.
Oh.
We will not antagonize our misophonic listeners by unwrapping and then eating our chocolate.
Feeling.
We'll do that after we've finished recording. Daniel and I have a little post-record celebration of number 50 with some of our chocolate.
But it doesn't have, but it could be maybe you're not a chocolate person. I
Mm,
don't know. Maybe you're a candy person. Maybe you're not a savory person. So maybe it's
mm,
you treat yourself to a steak or
yeah.
whatever it is. And
Mm,
this is why some authenticity needs to be there. Because if you say
mm,
to somebody, that an empathy needs to be there. Because if
mm,
you say to somebody, hey, I'm really proud of, let's go celebrate what you've done. How about I buy you a cup of coffee? And they're like, I don't really drink coffee.
yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
celebration to them. You have to celebrate in a way that is meaningful to the person that you are celebrating.
Yeah. Yeah. For us, it could be chocolate. We could treat ourselves to a book or even a trip to the library.
Hmm?
As an atomic celebration. We had an episode, or at least one episode in our 49 so far, talk about rest being part of training. And to me, celebration is a form, or can be a form of pausing, maybe resting, but it's in this, my brain thinks of it in the same way. You work, or train, and then you need to, using the old muscle building metaphor, you train at the gym, the actual muscles get built not when you're training, but when you're resting. And I think there's something similar to the actual kind of inspiration, motivation, resilience, all the things we've talked about happen when we celebrate rather than when we're working towards the accomplishment or achievement or those pauses, those along the way in the journey. And in the same way that we can have kind of micro breaks, then yeah, micro celebrations or atomic celebrations. And if we're doing it for ourselves as individuals, then yeah, getting to know what you like to do.
But
Yeah,
even as a leader, getting to know what your teams
yeah,
that needs to be part of. Ironically, I think the thing that happens is we get busy
mm,
and then celebrating is what we cut out.
yeah,
But the way to get more stuff done is to celebrate.
yeah, nice. Yeah, yeah, great point. Just like the resting, I suppose the resting could be the cell. You can combine two things at once. I am thinking about our design thinker capabilities, Danny, and wondering how these can come into play. Let's put ourselves, we're a leader in an organization. We're wanting to create an even better culture, and even, yeah, we want to help our people be their best. We want to achieve more as a team, as an organization. So our focus is on this question of celebrating and how we celebrate. How might we, or how do our design thinker capabilities come into play, do you think?
Well, definitely empathetic exploration,
Yeah, yeah,
getting to know what your people
yeah,
enjoy.
yeah.
I think visual communication is a lot of ritual wise and symbol. So a lot of celebration has symbolism in it. So I remember that somewhere that I worked, one of the things they had this big whiteboard
Mm,
and they would write, it was a sales team and they would write, so and so made their first sale today,
yeah,
or,
yeah,
and it was like a very visual thing.
yeah.
And then at one point, they had a thing on the board where they were trying to sell like 100 units in a certain amount of time. And they would like,
Mm,
every time you made a sale, you got to go up and write, like color it in.
yeah,
So I think visual communication
yeah.
is a big
I,
part of that.
I'll extend and expand that and say it's visual and auditory because I worked somewhere where there was a bell that was rung every
Yeah.
time something was sold. It's the, yeah, yeah, it's the kind of paying attention to, bringing attention to
Mm.
the little steps along the way towards the goal. Yeah. Okay. So visual communication, empathetic exploration. I think the curious experimentation is something that we should pay a lot of attention to because in terms of, I think this is a celebration in organizations, even at home or in non-work life, something we should pay more attention to. And it's likely that we won't find the, if we're not doing any of it or much of it, then we're unlikely to stumble upon the best way of doing it with our first effort. So we should be kind to ourselves and our organization and the people we're celebrating and prototype. We should figure out what the right answer is for our particular context, circumstance, etc. Yeah, and combining that with the empathetic exploration, like if we're a leader, then a great thing to do is to go and ask our team what are some different ways we might. Here's why celebration is important. Here's why I'd like to do more of it as a leader. I'd like us to come up with reasons or ways to do it as a team,
Yeah.
and let's start experimenting.
Ask the team. If you're a leader,
Yeah.
ask the team.
Mm,
But also, in the same vein, even if you're in your personal life, ask your partner, ask your
mm,
children, ask
mm.
your friends. This is coming up. How would you like to celebrate?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
personally think that all organizations have project planning or annual planning. In those planning processes, part of what needs to be planned for is how will we celebrate?
Yeah. Yeah. What will we celebrate? How will we celebrate? Yeah. Very good.
Awesome. Speaking of celebrating,
Oh, yeah.
shall we wrap this up so we can go have our chocolate?
Sounds like a good idea. Definitely worth a couple of squares of special chocolate, Danny.
Yes. So, as we have done 49 other times,
Yeah. Mm.
what are you taking away today, Peter?
What we're taking away is, first of all, thank you, Danny, for 49 and 50 episodes. Thank you for these conversations that we've had. And I've really enjoyed them all. And I appreciate you being a podcast co host. And What I'm taking away is this idea of remembering where you started and not jumping to where you are now, but recognizing how far you've come or what changes have happened between then and now. And in particular, in this context, I've now moved from somebody who hoped that nobody would listen to our recorded conversations to somebody who really hopes that people do listen to these conversations and also get something from them.
Yeah, so I did not realize that Peter was hoping nobody listened to our podcast when we first started.
And we should say that we are delighted that we have people who listen to our podcast on 6 of the 7 continents. That's something I would never have imagined 3 years ago.
So we have listeners from 6 continents. And yesterday, Peter and I were going through the list of countries and some of these places in the world we hadn't even heard of. So we quickly went and learned about them. So, a huge thank you to those that are listening to us from near and far and places that we know and places that we have a sense of belonging and connection to and places that we don't.
That we haven't until now, but now that we know there's
Yes.
people listening in those places, we do feel connected. Danny, what are some takeaways from this conversation?
First, thank you for saying yes when I came up with this idea and pitched it to you, hesitantly and secretly wishing that it didn't succeed, but you said yes anyway. So
I
thank
was
you.
curiously experimenting, Danny.
You were, yes. So thank you for being curious and thank you for saying yes and thank you for sticking with me on this journey of becoming podcasters.
Yeah,
And as I said before, thank you to the people that are turning in from 6 different continents to listen to our episodes. We wouldn't have this podcast if you weren't tuning in. So please keep listening.
yeah,
And my takeaway is the quote that you shared, you get what you celebrate. Because I think that celebration isn't something that, just particularly the small things,
mm,
I want to get much better at recognizing
mm,
this needs to be celebrated.
yeah, nice,
That's my takeaway.
great. And I think that to me, that's a perfect way to end up is that message. Thank you, Frank Blake, of you get what you celebrate.
Yes. Love it.
Chocolate time, Danny.
Chocolate time. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Thanks for
everyone.